The NFL Combine is here, and I can't wait to see 8 Ohio State players perform on this big stage.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Formally, this event is called the NFL Combine. Some of us, like yours truly, call it the Underwear Olympics. But whatever you call this annual event, I am excited to see 8 Ohio State players perform in Lucas Oil Stadium. Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Thursday edition of Locked On Buckeyes here on Thursday, February 29th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Here with us today, it's a guest we're going to hear a lot from over the next few weeks and months. Oh, in this show, it's Ryan Roberts of Rise and Draft Scouting, also the recruiting guy over at IrishBreakdown.com. Ryan, I'm glad the Combine is finally here because we could finally see 300-plus players perform in front of everyone trying to raise their draft stock.
Oh, man, I'm excited for it, too, because obviously I'll be boots on the ground in Indianapolis, Jay, and it'll be nice to, instead of waking up at 5 o'clock every morning by kids, I get to sleep in until 6 o'clock every morning and go to work. So I'm excited for that little vacation, if that's what you would call it as well.
You know, that's going to be my life here in a few months, 4 months from now, maybe. I forget. My son's coming July 20th, Ryan. And so I am looking forward to the times post my first child being born, us coming on the show and having those follow-up conversations like, well, Jay, what time are you waking up? 3. Why? Because somebody has to, and that's my job right now. But those 5 a.m. wake-up calls, man, it's rough, but somebody has to do it.
They do. Unfortunately, my 9-month-old, about to be 9-month-old, has made it her mission to wake up at 4 o'clock every morning for some reason recently. But the positives, Jay, is that I turn on the TV, sit with her, and I get some work done at 4 a.m. because NFL draft never sleeps, my friends.
This is true. It does not sleep. The NFL draft, which you will be there in Indianapolis covering the event.
Yep.
I'm excited to hear from you and follow you on Twitter after the event is complete, just to see what your thoughts are as you break down all of these athletes. Ohio State has 8 players performing in this event. Well, 7. 8 got invited, but it does seem like Marvin Harrison Jr. will not participate in this event. I don't really think it's like he needs to, but I would love to see him there on the field of Lucas Oil Stadium doing his thing.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a very interesting conversation. I've been having it all, obviously, with a bunch of different people today with Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, just kind of for people that don't know, and it's an Ohio State channel, so I feel like people are probably following along, but he will still be there and will still be doing the medicals and doing the interviews and doing all those miscellaneous, like, intangible things, which are important, understanding the competitor, understanding the person, understanding kind of the little nuances to make Marvin Harrison who he is from a worker perspective, from a personal perspective. But I really think, Jay, like, Marvin probably would have tested well, But, like, if he would have tested really well, you would have just been like, cool, Marvin Harrison Jr. is really talented. Like, we already knew he was really talented, right? I think that the risk versus reward conversation, Marvin Harrison had much more risk than reward this week in Indianapolis. So, like, as a fan, as a person that analyzes the game, would I have loved to see Marvin Harrison Jr. out there running routes and running his 40 and doing his vert and doing all this fun stuff because he's a great athlete? For sure. But ultimately, if you're in the business of decision making, right, it's a pretty easy decision. I don't think he needs a test. The odd one is that he's not even going to test at all at pro days, because what it used to be was that if you didn't, if a team didn't have an athletic number on you from any of the testing numbers, they wouldn't even put you on a board at one point. Like, that used to be the world but today with GPS tracking and those types of things, right? Like, that Marvin Harrison's plenty fast on the field. So unfortunately, we won't be able to see him. But fortunately for Marvin Harrison Jr., he has made himself such a good prospect that he doesn't need to test in Indianapolis and he doesn't need to test the pro day. He's going to go top 4 in this class, I think, but at worst, top 4.
Top 4. I was at the beginning saying, like, no lower than 10. Not saying he's not a good player. I'm not saying that.
Yep.
It's just what is a value? What do teams need? Where do trades go? And is a team's need higher? Say the team needs a quarterback over a receiver and there's a quarterback available. Even if Harrison Jr. is a better prospect than that quarterback, the team might go need over best player available. I've been saying top 10, trying to the entire time, but you're seeing top 4 at worst. That's a pretty big statement, Ryan.
I truly think so, Jay, because I think that there's a legitimate conversation, and I think people around the league believe this a lot, is that I think that a lot of people consider Marvin Harrison Jr. probably the top player in this draft. Now, NFL draft-wise, quarterbacks are going to go first, right? Whether it's the Chicago Bears picking one or it's somebody trading out with the Chicago Bears one, a quarterback's going to go number 1. A quarterback is going to go number 2, more than likely. And then a quarterback is probably going to go number 3 to the New England Patriots. But if the New England Patriots choose to pick a position player, not a quarterback, which you never know, that might be Marvin Harrison Jr. time. It's possible, right? But then number 4, you have the Arizona Cardinals, which they have Kyler Murray. They are stuck in that contract whether they want to be or not. I think they take who they conceive to be the best player available. Now, they could go Joe Alt from Notre Dame. Maybe Brock Bowers is even on the board from Georgia, but I do think that they would be an easy fit with Marvin Harrison Jr. So I think top 3 to 4 in this class, Marvin Harrison Jr. comes off the board. I would be surprised if he falls after 4. Not shocked because it's the NFL draft landscape, but surprised if he falls out of 4.
Now, there are 7 other players that will be performing, I do believe, at the Combine that are Buckeyes, former Buckeyes, excuse me. Cade Stover, Mayan Williams, Matt Jones, Josh Proctor, Steele Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg, and Michael Hall Jr. Let's go with the last guy who also is a junior in his family, Michael Hall Jr.
Yep.
Do you think he has to wow everybody with the on-field stuff at this event?
Yes, he does. He does. Because I think that this was a multi-step process for Michael Hall because, Jay, we talked about him going into the year. I love the talents.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the talent's exceptional. I mean, he's 6'3 plus, 33 plus inch arms, which is a really good arm length for an interior defensive lineman. He's also incredibly twitched up and cat quick. I mean, he is a really talented athlete on the interior. And 2022 showed a lot of upside, man. I mean, we remember that Notre Dame game, don't we? Like, he was an absolute man amongst boys against Notre Dame in 2022 and several other games that year. But you want to see more consistency, and you want to see just kind of a more disruptive player from a game-to-game perspective in 2023. And you didn't really get that. I don't think he was bad. I went back and watched the Notre Dame game specifically like yesterday, and I actually thought Michael Hall Jr. played a really good game against Notre Dame. It was just he had to share with a little bit of some really good players, you know, like JT Tuimoloau, who we've talked about, Jack Sawyer, Tyleik Williams was dominant in 2023. I mean, there was a lot of good defensive linemen to share, but ultimately he didn't take the step that we wanted him to.
Right.
So what is this process about? The Senior Bowl. I thought he had a really good Senior Bowl performance. I thought he showed a lot of great things down in Mobile. Well, that was a first step to kind of helping people forgive the film a little bit, right? And that's kind of what this process is about. You want to have great showing and the All-Star circuit, which he did. Now you want him to go down to Indianapolis and show out athletically and show that he has a high upside as a player because he was only a redshirt sophomore this year. I think we need to remember that a little bit, right? He's still a young cat playing on the interior. This process has all been about NFL evaluators. You need to buy into Michael Hall. You need to see him and see him for the upside that he brings to the table, not necessarily the on the field today. And I think that if he shows out in Indianapolis, he could be continue a rise because I've been told a lot of NFL scouts really like Michael Hall, the talents. It's just about now showing that you can bet on that talent. And if he's able to showcase that he is a gifted mover inside and a guy that has upside and an explosive, flexible athlete, I think that he has that ability to continue that rise in this process.
We're going to continue this conversation about Michael Hall Jr. after the break. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fits. Only available to U.S. customers. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more, and the best service in Central Ohio. Billiards Plus also carries grills that have up to 30-year warranties. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Alhassan, Canada, Billiards, and more. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Ryan, the on-field stuff is great. I think that he is one of those guys, when you think about testing, he can test well. Like, I do honestly believe you talk about him being twitched up. I think he's going to test pretty well. Short shuttle, short movement, the explosion. I think he'll do well there. What about the stuff where he's having these meetings with the teams? Do you think, or have you heard of any issue in these meetings that might provide an obstacle for him to be a guy who's raising his draft stock?
I haven't heard anything negative about him off the field. I think that the thing that you want to sit down with Michael Hall in these conversations, in these team meetings, Jay, is simply get on the board, show me what you know, show me how football savvy you are, your intelligence on the field, right? Like, all that stuff is going to matter, I think, extensively for him. But then the other side is just, there's going to be some hard questions that are going to be asked about him, and nothing negative, right? Like, it's not it's criminal or like something off the field that is like trouble worrisome. It's just like, hey, Michael, we thought you could have been maybe the top defensive tackle in this class if you took a massive step. Why didn't you take that step? Right? Was it something team related? Was it something your work ethic related? Was it something, out of your control? Like, what was the reasoning for that? So I think that is the part of the process that people don't talk about enough, because yes, we love watching, the guys run 4.3 and have 40+ inch verts. Cause it's like, you just watch and you're just like, that isn't human, right? Like, these guys are doing athletic feats that we have just never seen. It's really captivating. But the parts of the process that people don't talk about enough, and like when we get to Mr., a couple other guys on the board, it's going to be super interesting, is the medical side of things, and then the conversations of the team-centric things, right? Like, what is a person's compete level? Who are they as a person? And luckily for Michael Hall, he doesn't have a medical stuff that he has to answer to, right? That's not going to be a part of the equation. It's going to be simply like, make me buy into you as a person and as an athlete and as a competitor. If he does, I think he can rise, Jay. I really do, because I just don't think, literally just recorded a defensive tackle show on this, a ranking show. And there is just, you could probably count 2 to 3 fingers of like the guys that are as athletically gifted as Michael Hall. Like, there's 2 to 3. I mean, he is that good of an athlete. He just needs to showcase that there's a lot of upside still to tap into, and that you can get comfortable with him as a worker.
Quickly, Ryan, where did he rank on that show?
He ranked number 3 for me, actually. Actually, no, I'm sorry. He was number 4. He was number 4 for me. Interior defensive lineman 4, because he had, out of that top 5, he probably had the lowest amount of production based upon the rest of the top 5, but he has the athletic gifts to be able to kind of vault himself up in the class as well. So it's a little bit of a betting on gifts, betting on athletic traits, but he has a lot of it to work with, obviously.
Let's go back to the offensive side of the ball. We're going to save that safety that you mentioned. The medical is going to save him for later in the show when we have more time to dive into that one. But I want to put 2 guys together. Cade Stover, Mayan Williams. I thought Mayan came out early. I thought he should have stayed in school. I understand with the running back room at Ohio State why he made that decision. But then also Cade Stover kept getting better. He was solid. He was consistent, which is what you want at a tight end. But this event for these 2 guys, I think Mayan medicals are important. I think Cade, not so much medicals, But
Yep.
really, can he hands and can he run? Like, how fast is he? Those type of things for Cade Stover. But these two guys are interesting because I thought mine would be a bigger fit for the offense. He got hurt. Cade,
Yep.
I thought he would have more catches. But that didn't happen.
Oh man, two very different situations, like you
Yeah.
said. Mayan Williams has been banged up for 2 years. I mean, he was a good play. He was a good player in 2022, in my opinion. I thought he was a very productive and efficient player, but he got banged out. He banged up down the stretch. Like the durability stuff was in question. And then this year, obviously, like barely played, right? Like you
Yeah.
barely played, and you didn't have any impact of momentum on your side in that coin, right? So he is a player that medicals are going to be number one. Number two, which I don't think is going to lend in his favor very much, is can he test really well? Because yeah, we talked about this before the season. I felt like Mayan Williams' film was good, but he wasn't going to ever wow anybody from an athletic testing perspective. And unfortunately, he's in a situation now where, due to the injuries, you kind of have to turn some people's heads a little bit and be like, oh, he's more athletic than we thought he was. So Mayan's in a tough spot, to be honest. He's in a very difficult spot. You got to do well in the medicals. You have to showcase that maybe there's a little bit more athletic upside there than maybe even I would give him credit for. Cade Stover is quite simply, he's a high floor player that brings a whole lot to the table as far as he could block. He's got strong hands, super dependable, and he's a leader, right? Like he's a leader. He's been a leader for that Buckeye team over the last 2 years. But how athletic is he? And I pose that question because I watch him and I'm just like, man, I just wish he was a little bit more athletic. Because Jay, that's what I think. I think that he's going to end up being a really good number 2 tight end in the league. Really good number 2. But there is a cap on Cade Stover, in my opinion. I don't think he's dynamic in any way. I think he is just requisitely solid athlete in the NFL level, but nothing spectacular, which is going to limit his upside. But he blocks his butt off, man. I know he's going to go in the interviews. He's going to do really well. He has no medical concerns. I hope that he's able to raise some eyebrows with some testing stuff. Like if he's somehow able to like pop a, let's say 4.67 in the 40, 4.68, like something like that, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Cause like right now I watch him and I'm just like, it's probably a 4.8 kid on tape, which it's nothing wrong with it. It's just, we're talking about the ceiling versus floor conversation, right? Like I think the ceiling's a little bit capped for Cade, but the floor is very high, obviously.
Let's stay with that thought there because I'm very
Yes.
interested to know the 40 times that you're going to predict of these two.
Okay.
I personally think Mayan's more low 4.7. I don't know if that's where you're leaning. And I was thinking Cade on a good day, 4.68 on a very good day, but they're probably speed wise very similar.
Yeah, similar-ish. I would say so. Yeah. Yeah. I would say Cade, if I had to predict it, I would say somewhere 4.78 to 4.8 flat, somewhere in that ballpark. I would say Mayan maybe a touch faster just because I bet that he's going to come in a little less. Like, I hope he doesn't come in at 233 pounds like he was in the preseason. I hope he comes in more in the 225-ish, 223, somewhere in that ballpark. So I'll say he runs in the 4.72 range. Like, he's not fast. I think the more important part of Mayan's evaluation, though, honestly, because I don't think anybody expects him to be fast, is I hope his jumps are good. I hope his explosive numbers are good. Like if he can pop out like a 38-inch vert or something like that, you're like, oh, lower body explosiveness. That's really nice to see. But yeah, long speed, I just don't see it with Mayan Williams, unfortunately.
What is more important in this process, Ryan? The vertical jump or the broad jump for Mayan?
I mean, broad jump more. I think both matter because both measure explosiveness, like lower body explosiveness. But I would say broad is a little bit more I think honestly broad jump is probably the one that is most translatable to every position to a degree, right? Because there's gonna be some guys where, hey, even no matter how explosive you are, if you have 300 pounds in your frame, you're probably not gonna have a great vert, right? Because there's a lot,
Correct.
there's this thing called gravity, right? That kind of holds people down at times. But for a broad jump, you're fighting against gravity a lot less, so you can really measure that short area explosiveness. So I would say broad jump more important than vertical. But if he has good in both, then that is a really nice thing to see.
Ryan, there's one more guy I want to hit before we hop into the break. It's Matt Jones. He's an offensive lineman. He's a guard. Played center against Missouri, which I don't think that was a good decision. Somebody said they were doing that to get him tape film for the NFL, and I was like, that was dumb. That didn't work out very well at all. This young man, though, for this event, offensive linemen are not really the kind of position where you can say, we learned a lot about him via the drills that we're going through. So for an offensive lineman
Yeah.
like Jones, how do you personally view the process for him as far as looking ahead and projecting the NFL draft?
It's even less exciting for an interior offensive lineman, right? Because like the only
Yeah.
thing that I really like watching with offensive tackles is when they get them in the drills where they have to shuffle across the
Mhm.
field and they have to backpedal because then you can see hip fluidity and hip tightness potentially. Unfortunately, like an offensive guard, your hips are going to be a little tighter. You're a more tightly wound athlete. And Matthew Jones, I don't think he's going to look great in shorts and a t-shirt, right? Like that's just not the drills that are going to accentuate his strengths. I think for me, the biggest, most important thing that we're not going to have answers to immediately is the meetings with the teams, right?
Yeah.
He needs to make the people fall in love with him because there was some good tape. Just, he's just not exciting, right? Like he's just kind of does his work, gets down to business, nothing dynamic about him. He's just fine, right? Like he's a solid overall player who is probably at best a late round kid, probably seventh round to a priority free agent. That in that realm, it's about do coaches believe in you, right? Do they believe in you and potentially mortgage assets into you to be a part of their football team? So there's going to be a lot of back and forth on him, at least as far as what's important, what's not. I think the only thing that really truly matters is one, medicals, and I don't think that there's going to be a medical red flag on Matthew Jones. But more importantly, it's going to be about selling himself to the teams that are interviewing him because at that point, that's where opportunity is created.
There are three more players that Ryan and I need to discuss that will be at the combine. They're all on defense. We'll dive into Chambers, Eichenberg, and Proctor after the break. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get Buckeyes with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers, that might be you, can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live sim game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Maybe looking to bet on more than just the NBA. You got college basketball, you got future college football bets, and also Major League Baseball. Spring training, it's underway. Just visit fanduel.com/locked on to shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Let's go right to Eichenberg. I'm going to save Proctor for last, trying to breeze through Eichenberg and Chambers. Ryan,
Yep.
Eichenberg got hurt in the latter part of the regular season. I believe he missed the Cotton Bowl, the game against Missouri, due to
Yep.
that injury. Steel Chambers, a linebacker, just like I thought Mayan Williams should have stayed in school or gone maybe transferred somewhere else. I thought Chambers should have stayed in school or maybe transferred somewhere else because I think that he's a good linebacker, but I think he
Yeah.
could. I think I was kind of hoping personally there was another level he could go into to make himself a more favorable draft prospect when the time came for him to go into the NFL. But these two guys, linebackers, they get to do a little different drills on the
Mhm.
field, which I think that they can both. Eichenberg can either do really good on like the pass cover stuff or do what we expect him to do. In Chambers, I think that's one area where he can show his hip movement, his shoulders, and really excel in those pass coverage drills.
Yeah, I think the on field is much more important for Chambers because, like you said, he's a less productive out of the two. The upside is there, still athletic gifts to tap into. There's no doubt, but you need to showcase that in Indianapolis now, right? Like we've built you as this very athletic linebacker, former running back that can move really well, but is kind of still learning the position. Well, you need to show that out now, right? Like 4.6 flat in the 40, something really good, right? Like you need to have some explosive numbers. You need to showcase that you have loose hips to be able to transition and move well in space. All those things are very important. For Tommy, I'm just like, Tommy, just be fine, right? Just be good enough. Just be good enough. I don't think he's Tough Borland, right? Like he's not going to go to the combine and run like 4.99 or whatever the heck Tough Borland ran. Like he's not a bad athlete in that sense, but just solid everywhere. Just check boxes because he's another player that we talked about, Jay. Like he's like Cade Stover in the sense that Tommy's going to sit down with these teams and teams are going to fall in love with him. Like they are because he's a leader. He's very smart. He's intelligent. He's a productive kid. Like all those things are tangibly going to be really exciting to people. But showing on the field that you are a requisite athlete. I'm not asking you to be a plus athlete. I'm not asking you to be a special athlete. I'm asking you to be Josie Jewell, right? Who Josie Jewell is a similar profile coming out of Iowa, ultra productive, not a great athlete, but he went to the combine and it was enough. You're like, okay, cool, I'm good there now. And lo and behold, Josie Jewell's a starting linebacker in the NFL. And I think Tommy has a similar pathway. He's got to be a solid enough athlete, and he's got to showcase himself in front of those people in Mobile that he is the leader that he's been built at, obviously, for the Buckeyes the last 2 years.
Last but not least, this is one player. I think he was in his 6th year this past year, Ryan.
He
Josh
was.
Proctor. You talk about guys that need to kind of wow and impress in both the medicals and, Ryan, the on-field drills. That is Josh Proctor. And I don't really have a prediction about the on-field stuff or the medicals, which to me kind of makes me nervous because he couldn't go back to college. He had it's NFL or bust.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what to kind of expect from him because he's been hurt so much in his career.
I think we talked about him like 3 years ago. And at the time I was like literally, I think we talked about him 3 years ago. But I remember telling you, Jay, I was like, you know, I kind of like Proctor, man. There's something to him, I think, right? And it's just the next 2 years were just kind of like, dang, bro, like you just can't stay healthy. You can't get on the field. You can't just can't gain momentum. I actually thought he played really well in 2023 when he was on the field. I thought he played really well. He is just pretty good at almost everything. And it's like, that's awesome. That's a good baseline of potentially sticking. I think that he has upside as a rotational piece and as a special teamer. Like, I think that he can do both those things. But you mentioned the elephant in the room, and it is a big elephant. Those medicals, man, could be a disaster. It could be a disaster, Jay. I don't know what they're going to be. None of us know what they're going to be, but he has had multiple years of just injuries after injury. And it's like, at some point, you have to wonder how much toll has been put on this body to play the game of football, right? So I hope he passes the medicals because I actually think he has a chance to stick on the next level. I truly do, man. I think there's a lot of good on Josh Proctor. I'm just going Joshua Proctor, Josh Proctor's film. I think there's a lot of good that you can tap into, and I think he has stay power on the next level. But ultimately, it's going to be determined based upon what do those medicals look like. Because for people out there that don't understand, the NFL, you are putting assets and millions of dollars into a player and make them a part of your team. So you're trying to alleviate risk. You're trying to put less risk in the players. You want results. And Josh Proctor on the field, you get results. But ultimately, if he's not on the field, availability is the number one ability. And that's the ability that he has to showcase that he's able to stay healthy on the next level, which is a massive question mark right now.
This is a very interesting comparison between Michael Hall Jr. and Josh Proctor. One guy who is a redshirt sophomore, one guy who is a 6th year, what do you call him, senior? I don't know.
Super senior.
Yeah. There you go. That's better terminology there. But you have two guys here. That's one guy's played half the amount of time as the other, but both guys have, let's say, question marks about Hall, a little bit about productivity, not so much like trash play from him, but more so like you want a little bit better in 2023. Proctor played better in the past year, but it's like the medicals. So the question by these two guys, it's a very interesting comparison. I'm going to kind of go through this kind of quickly, Ryan. I'm going to have a little bit of fun here. You kind of predicted Mayan Williams 40, Cade Stover's 40, Chambers, I think you said 4.7, 4.6.
Chambers, 4.6 flat. I'll say for Steel Chambers, 4.6 flat. We'll go there.
Then let's predict the rest. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is not running, but I still want to hear what you think he would run. Harrison Jr., Eichenberg, Michael Hall. The floor is yours.
I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. would have ran somewhere 4.42 to 4.45, somewhere in that ballpark. Just good, right? Like at 6'3" plus, you just look at that and say like that is a good number to work with, right? So he would be somewhere 4.4 low in my 4.4 low to me. Tommy Eichenberg, I think Josie Jewell is around a 4.78, and that's actually my comp for Tommy Eichenberg. So I'll go 4.78 for a Tommy Eichenberg, which as an inside linebacker, a true Mike, it's a fine time. There's nothing wrong with it. It's solid. Proctor. I will say 4.55 is Josh Proctor. I think Proctor's going to be a little bit more athletic than some people think. I actually think he's a pretty decent athlete.
Yeah. What about Michael Hall?
Oh, I forgot about Michael Hall. I forgot about my boy. Michael Hall is going to blaze the trail, sir. 280 pounds. He's going to run 4.85. That's my prediction. He's going to fly.
I think when you see him in person, you're going to be
Yeah.
surprised at how small he is and wonder
Yes.
how is 280 pounds in that frame. I went to a game, I think it was earlier this year. We were actually outside. We happened to be right by where the parents were meeting the players. And I was like, that dude's not 280 or 285 or two. He's not that. Like, he's not this, like, not. So who is the, oh my gosh, I forget the D tackle that played for the Rams.
It reminds me of, he reminds me of, do you remember another Ohio State guy? Do you remember Draymond Jones? That's what he reminds me of a little bit. Draymond Jones, like he's got that like very sleek frame where you're just like, he doesn't look 280, but then he steps on the scale and you're like, oh, he is 280 pounds. Like, that's pretty wild, man. Pretty wild. Yeah.
What are your last thoughts about this group? You could pick any player or just the group as a whole about what they might do at the combine.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the linebackers are probably the one I'm most excited to see because, again, I think there's a lot of things that you can gamble with Steel Chambers and look at that profile and be like, he could still be a whole lot better than he is right now. And then Tommy Eichenberg, it's like Tommy's in kind of that weird, there's like a little bit of a grouping of linebackers this year. Some of the, the JD Bertrands of the world for Notre Dame's another one where it's just like, they're good, right? And they have good eyes and they're always in the right spot. But do they have any upside that they bring to the table from an athleticism perspective? Can they do anything else than just play tackle to tackle in the run game? And I don't know the answer to that with Tommy because Ohio State's, and this is smartly because they play to strengths, they blitz them a lot because they're like, you are a downhill player. Let's keep you downhill. I think it's very smart. I think that is a brilliant idea by that defensive staff. But ultimately, NFL, now we're taking the next step, you're going to have to play in pass coverage at some point. Like you're going to get isolated in man-to-man coverage at times. You're going to have to be a zone dropper at the very least. What type of athlete is he? I really feel like if we could just merge the two together somehow, like if I could take Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg and put them together, we're probably talking about a top 50 pick, but unfortunately they both have a little bit of things to answer this week.
I'm looking forward to hearing from Ryan back on the show after the combine, potentially. That has not been scheduled yet. So, guys, don't say, yes, Ryan's coming back. I don't know. I don't know at all. But I would love to hear from Ryan after the combine, once he gets back home, to kind of just empty the notebook out and discuss what he saw, what he witnessed, what he heard, and things like that happened at the NFL Combine. You can follow Ryan on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rise in Draft. I keep having Brian Smith on the show. And I've said his Twitter handle over and over and over. Excuse me, that was about to be Brian's, not yours. You can follow Brian on
what's it? It's FB Scout _ Florida or something like that, right? Is that Brian?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Follow Brian once again on Twitter at Rise the letter in Draft. Follow me on the same platform at JStevens07. This has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Thursday. We'll see you next time.